What's up, nerds? My name is Steve from Flipping the Nerd, and this is my top 10 favorite horror props. One of the things I've always wanted to own is a genuine horror prop, like a screen-used prop to put into my man cave, particularly in the horror genre. Now, I'm going to have the same list for non-horror. I think it's in September, but first I want to go with my passion, which is the horror genre, and list, if I had carte blanche, which top 10 items I would want to own as horror props. Now, one rule, only one per franchise, and I'm going to list specifically which one I would want. If there's multiple films in a franchise, I might not necessarily want the one from the original movie. Some of them I prefer to have something later in the series. You'll see what I'm talking about when I get there. But before I get to it, of course, some honorable mentions. The first one is the penis gun that Sex Machine uses, as played by Tom Savini in From Dusk Till Dawn. I absolutely love this movie, and one of the most memorable moments is Tom Savini, who lays back and takes off his clip, and a little gun comes out of his crotch, and it's a little like kind of penis gun. And I always remember the scene. It makes me laugh every time. I love Tom Savini, and I love this film, and I think it would be so cool to own the gun that Tom Savini used in the movie. And I just really adore it. I'm kind of thinking why it's not on my list, but I do have a pretty set top 10, but I definitely had to mention it because it would be awesome to own. The next one is Pennywise's costume. I would pick the one from the original It, the one that Tim Curry wore. I actually prefer the remake of It as far as the film goes, but I preferred Tim Curry's Pennywise, and I think it would be really cool to own the costume that he wore. I'm sure there's multiple, but it doesn't really matter which one. As long as it was in the original film, that would be really, really cool. And just one more thing I forgot to mention at the top. It has to fit in my man cave, so I can't pick like a vehicle or anything like that. It's got to be small enough that I can, actually display it in my man cave. So I want to get that out of the way. The next one, I think is probably the largest item on my list, but still would fit in my man cave. And that's the wheelchair that Joseph used in The Changeling. The Changeling is this really awesome ghost film. I love ghost films. And the wheelchair, it's kind of a haunted wheelchair, I just absolutely adore. It's creepy. It made this film just so much better. And I think it would be a really cool thing to own. Now, I don't know if it'd be even more awesome if I could record my videos in it, in the wheelchair. But if I owned it, I would probably put it somewhere where it would never be touched ever. But yeah, I had to give it an honorable mention. And then we have Billy the Puppet from Saw, and I would pick it from the original Saw movie. Such an iconic puppet at this point. Very creepy, is at the intro of all the videos that he puts in the packages for people in the movie. I think it would be really cool. They make amazing replicas, so that's definitely an option, but to get the one that was used in the film would just be fantastic. And finally, maybe on the cuter side of horror, Gizmo from Gremlins, from the original Gremlins. It would be so cool to own an actual screen used Gizmo. I absolutely adore his look. He's really, really cool looking, really adorable. So I think it would be a cool horror prop to own, but it couldn't make my top 10, I don't think, because there are things I want more. And it's not, if I have a top 10 horror list and I could have the cutest thing ever in horror, it would be kind of weird. But anyway, those are my honorable mentions. Let's get to the top 10. Number 10. The Annabelle doll from the first Conjuring movie. Of course, the Annabelle doll has appeared in multiple movies at this point. It was in both Conjuring movies. It was in 3 Annabelle films, the third one coming out a week after I record this. And it was also in La Lorna. So the Annabelle doll, super iconic, very creepy looking. I would love to have a screen-used Annabelle doll in my collection. Now, like Billy the Puppet, they make amazing reproductions of this, so that's definitely a possibility. Probably something I'll get at some point as well. but to have a screen use Annabelle doll would just be fantastic, and that's why I put it on the list. Number 9. Blade's machete from Dawn of the Dead. Dawn of the Dead's my favorite horror film of all time, so I was trying to think, what would I want to own from Dawn of the Dead? There aren't a lot of super iconic props, and if there are, maybe I'm just missing it, and I'd love you to tell me if you think of it. But what it came down to is Blade's machete. I mean, again, Tom Savini coming into the list, playing Blades in the movie, and there's that iconic shot of him putting the machete in the zombie and then like kicking the zombie as he gets it out. Absolutely, I think that's the coolest item that they have in that film. It was mostly like special effects and stuff, so there's nothing that would be very displayable in that movie. So that's why I picked that item. And I had to have something from my favorite horror film of all time. So of course, that made the list. Number 8. Hannibal's mask from The Silence of the Lambs. Hannibal Lecter is one of the biggest icons in horror. Just the first, I believe, the first horror film to win Best Picture at the Academy Awards. An absolutely amazing performance by Anthony Hopkins, and that mask is just so iconic, and I would love to own the one that Anthony Hopkins wore in the film. So that's, it's just such a cool looking piece. It's a very simple piece too, but it adds so much to the scenes that it's in and to the character and to the whole movie that I think it would be awesome to own this piece. So definitely deserves a spot on the list. Number 7. The axe from The Shining, the one that Jack Nicholson wields. The Shining, again, one of my favorite horror films of all time. So I wanted to have something, and it was a really big toss-up between the axe and one of the Grady twins like dresses, because the Grady twins is probably my favorite thing from The Shining. But I just wanted to own it. I think the axe is what I would pick. It would be a very close decision. And if you asked me tomorrow, maybe I would pick the dress from the Grady twins. But again, a super iconic piece. What deducts it a little bit of points is that if I put it on the wall, you won't necessarily know that it comes from The Shining, because it is kind of just an axe. But if I had like a certificate of authenticity, it would just be the coolest thing to know that I own the axe from that infamous scene where he busts down the door, and for sure, I would absolutely love to own it, and that's why it's on the list. Number 6. The spinning head Reagan from The Exorcist. The Exorcist, also one of my favorite horror films of all time, and Reagan is such a cool, iconic character in the horror genre, and I absolutely adore her. And I always plug this in every time I speak about The Exorcist. My God, go check out The Exorcist TV show. It's amazing. So I'm just throwing it out there. But it has nothing to do with this. This would be... so in the scene where Reagan spins her head, it's actually an animatronic. And if you listen to the behind the scenes, there's a really cool story where they drove it around like in the front seat of a car and were messing with people. And it's a whole funny thing. And in the pictures that I put up, when I announce each thing, you'll see Linda Blair next to that mannequin, and I think it would be so cool to own. It's just such a cool piece and a part of an amazing movie, an amazing scene in that movie, and that's why I put it on the list. Number 5, the Necronomicon, specifically for me, the one from Army of Darkness, not the one from Evil Dead. Evil Dead's an amazing film, but Army of Darkness is my favorite film in that series. And I really like the role that the Necronomicon plays in that movie. I just love to own that book that they put into that version of the Evil Dead series. It's just such a cool looking piece. It's just got all the pages and everything. And the front is just a fantastic thing. And you would immediately recognize it if you was on a wall. Well, if you're a horror fan. If you're not, probably not. But if you're a horror fan, you would immediately recognize it. And to have it as a display piece would just be the coolest thing ever. So for sure, the Necronomicon had to be on the list. Number 4. The Chucky doll from Child's Play, the original. This is where the list kind of goes into the obvious, I think, the obvious picks. And the first one of the obvious picks would be the Chucky doll. Super iconic, spanned a ton of films. But when it comes down to it, I thought about maybe the one from Bride of Chucky, which it's probably my favorite one of the series, to be honest with you. But there's nothing more iconic than the one in the very first Child's Play. It'd be even cooler if he came in the box, but who knows if that box survived. So yeah, I would absolutely love to own the Chucky from the first film. Again, there's a ton of great reproductions out there, but to own the piece from the movie would be fantastic. Number 3. Jason's mask. Specifically, and this might surprise you, from Jason Takes Manhattan. It's not my favorite film in the series, but there's something about that mask in Jason Takes Manhattan that I really, really like. I don't know what it is, and I'd love for you to tell me in the comments which Jason mask is your favorite. Not necessarily which movie is your favorite, which you could tell me as well, I would love to know, but which mask. And for me, there's something about Jason Takes Manhattan that I really, really love. It's one of the Kane Hodder masks, and it's got the crack in it, and I just really, really love that version of the mask. I don't know what it is, and to me, it's the most iconic one. So someone else could have, its first appearance, or one of maybe the more iconic ones from the other films. But for me, I want the Jason mask from Jason Takes Manhattan Part 8, and that would be the one I put on my list. Number 2. Michael Myers' mask from the original Halloween. Original Halloween is my favorite Halloween, and I think that there isn't a more iconic mask in horror than Michael Myers. Now, there are a few iconic masks in pop culture that are maybe more iconic. I think it probably Darth Vader being number 1. But for horror, I think the king of the best mask would be Michael Myers. Some people would probably argue Jason. I'd love to know which one you think is more iconic, but I don't know. I just, Jason, when it comes down to it, is really just a hockey mask. So Michael Myers, unmistakably, it's Michael Myers. And I adore that film. I watch it every single Halloween without fail. It's the only film that I have to watch in October. Like all the other horror films, they kind of alternate years, but Michael Myers in Halloween, the original, is one that I watch every single year. And it would be the coolest thing ever to own the mask from the original. So yeah, that's why it's on my list, but not quite number 1. Number 1, Freddy Krueger's glove from the original Nightmare on Elm Street. In my opinion, there is no more iconic prop than the glove that Freddy Krueger wears in Nightmare on Elm Street. I think Freddy is the most iconic horror villain, probably because he talks. Whereas like Michael doesn't talk and Jason doesn't talk. So Freddy Krueger, I think, is the icon. And to own one of, and because I'm assuming there's more than one of the original gloves from that movie would be the coolest thing ever. I've actually seen one of the gloves. It's at Planet Hollywood in Orlando, or it's in the Planet Hollywood store at Hollywood Studios in Orlando. One of the two. I've seen the one of the screen use gloves from the first movie, and it just like I just look at it in awe, and I would love to own it. It would just be the coolest thing ever, and the ultimate showpiece. I think I'd build my whole house around it. Just like I'd rearrange the entire house just so I can put a spotlight on the glove that Freddy wore in the original Nightmare on Elm Street. That's how like big of a piece I think that is. It's just the most iconic horror piece, in my opinion, and I would love to know, what do you think is the most iconic horror piece? I would really, really love to know which horror props you would like to own. I think it's a fun discussion that I hope I can have with you guys, because I had a lot of fun thinking about this list, and I'm sure there's things I forgot that I'm going to kick myself later when I'm editing, or I'm watching this in the future, or I'm discussing it with someone, but that's what makes these lists so fun. Like I said, I'm going to do the same list for non-horror, and I think it's September, sometime in the fall. And that's that. Next week is E3 2019. I'm a big video gamer, so the list is going to be my top 10 E3 2019 wishes. So things that I really love to see happen at E3 next weekend. So that's it. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you all on the flip side. Goodbye.